The education system in Africa is causing more poverty than prosperity. Follow my argument. I want to talk about poverty indoctrination in Africa through the education system. Now, I'm going to explore a couple of points and arguments about this, that Africa's education system is unintentionally fostering that cycle of poverty, especially among the young people, right? Drawing from my experience of being a high school teacher and being a university lecturer across Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, and even being a guest university lecturer across several universities across Africa, and of course, being a student myself in Cameroon from the primary school, secondary school, high school, university, and all of that. I think that the education system in Africa, let me say across many African countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is causing more of poverty than wealth creation. Right. And I have had the privilege as a speaker, as a consultant, to travel, I think, 15 African countries so far, to speak in youth events and economic events and entrepreneurship events and so on. Right. And I think that the current education curriculum across Africa is limiting a lot of young people from opportunities, and it fails to equip students with the skills necessary for economic growth and prosperity. Now, hear me very well. For anybody to experience economic growth, for anybody to experience economic prosperity, there are certain set of skill set and educational exposure that that person must have. And in the African setting, many schools and many education systems established by the government have failed to help people that go through these institutions to develop the skills necessary for economic growth and prosperity. You see, education is a powerful tool that shapes the societal norms and the economic future of every nation. If any country gets their formal education wrong, that country is likely getting the future of that country wrong, especially when it comes to the economy. You see, when educational systems instill limitations rather than possibilities, they can perpetuate a cycle of poverty. The education systems have the power to contribute to poverty indoctrination and limiting the students' world views and economic aspirations. And I feel, and from observation and being somebody who has been in the process or in the system somehow, I think that the educational system across many African countries is greatly contributing to poverty indoctrination, limiting students' worldviews and economic aspirations. You see, when I talk about the education system, I am talking especially about the content of the education and the pedagogy of that education system. You see, because when the content and the pedagogy is structured in a way that it cannot transform the mentality of the students, and it cannot cause students to aspire and to achieve economic prosperity, something is wrong. Because anything called education should be able to enhance the capacity of anybody going through that education system to aspire for something more and to have what it takes to achieve that which they are aspiring for. And across many African countries, the education system have failed to achieve this. You see, a few years ago, I started intentionally observing the educational systems across many African countries as I travel around. And I was observing with the following objectives. Number one, to identify the educational practices that contribute to poverty indoctrination in Africa. Because I started noticing this, or I started having this concept a few years ago. Number two, to analyze the impact of curriculum content on students' economic perspective. This is important. We will keep raising poor students and poor struggling citizens across the African continent if we don't spend the time to analyze the impact of the curriculum that we deliver on the students' economic perspectives. Number three, my observations were to examine how a focus on Western educational models may neglect the practical skills and cultural context relevant to African economies. I remember very well in my school in geography, we were studying fishing in Norway, in Cameroon. Why didn't we study fishing in Limbe? Why didn't we study fishing in Idi now? Why didn't we study those practical things and find better ways to convert those? Even if we are learning from the Western economies, it's not to copy and paste, but we were supposed to enhance the capacity of these educational stakeholders to start contextualizing the relevance of what they are picking to feed the African economies. I started examining how a focus on Western educational models led to the neglect of the practical skills and cultural context that is relevant to African economies. Number four, I was observing and analyzing to assess the role of teacher attitude and expectations in reinforcing economic limitations. I can tell you critically clear, many teachers across different educational sectors in Africa, they are so good, very good. They have the attitude that they reinforce economic limitations in the minds of their students. Number five, to explore the influence of educational resources on poverty mindset. We need to review the kind of educational resources that we expose our students to, because I can categorically say that in the last couple of decades, the educational resources that our students have been exposing themselves to have been planting in them the poverty mindset. We have been raising more of consumers instead of producers. We have been raising more of copy and paste instead of people that can innovate and improve. Lastly, number six, my observations were based to investigate the lack of emphasis on entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and vocational training in many education systems. This is critical and this is still happening. We don't have proper emphasis on entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is more than just starting a business. It is a way of life. It's a way of thinking. If we have citizens who are more entrepreneurial in their thinking, it is going to shift the economy of every nation across the African continent. What about financial literacy? I mean, everybody goes to school to get a job to make money, and we don't teach these students what money is all about. We need to have financial literacy from primary school to secondary school to the university. What is the need of going to school for 7 years, 10 years, 17 years, and you don't have the right foundation when it comes to financial literacy? What about vocational education? I don't know who sold us the lie that you only make it big in Africa when you sit in the office and you wear a suit and a tie. That is totally wrong. Look at every great economy across the world, from China to the US to Germany to Japan to South Korea to Dubai. Look at every continent, every country that is making it big. Go and check the quality of their vocational training. But in many African countries, like for example in Cameroon, I remember very well, and I think it's still happening. They used to differentiate in what they call common entrance, right? When you perform so well in A or B, you get to attend grammar school. Students who perform C or and below, they send them to technical education. Why? Because they consider that poorly performing students should go to technical schools and best performing students should go to the grammar school. This is the biggest scam that existed across many African countries. If we have more brilliant people going to technical school, we are going to have more engineers, more architects, and people that can design and create. Producers are made in technical or vocational training institute and not in grammar schools. Let the journalists go there. Let the all these people, let them go there. Let the lawyers go to those kind of schools. And after all, when they go to those kind of schools and they come out, they will still need the products, the equipment, and the tools that the people who went to technical school develop. You see that? So, my discoveries, my insights gathered through thoughtful observation and interactions with students, analysis of curriculum materials, and my observations of pedagogical approaches across the African continent, certain aspects of the education system across many African countries, such as heavy emphasis on rote learning, lack of critical thinking development, limited exposure to practical entrepreneurship, inability to adapt the learning process to the fast-changing economy, significantly contribute to poverty, indoctrination. The prevailing educational approach in Africa fails to encourage ambition, fails to provide the tools for financial success, thus perpetuating economic stagnation. My proposed solutions, and then I'm done with this chit chat. What are my proposed solutions? I am proposing the following. And you see, these are discussions that on a personal note, I have done my best to have with people who are school founders, secondary school founders, high school, university, vocational training institute. I have done my best to have a lot of one-on-one meetings with leaders in these institutions, right? I remember something happened, funny enough, years ago in Cameroon. I was having a discussion with a university professor. He was in a leadership position, or what they call the administrative position in the university, and you know, in the course of the conversation, he was asking me if I have a doctorate degree. At that time, I didn't have a doctorate degree yet, and he was like, you know, you cannot talk to me. We cannot have this kind of discussion because you don't have a doctorate degree. And by that time, I've been doing work. I've been traveling different nations and consulting and speaking and talking to different people across different economies. But you see, this is the challenge that we have in Africa. Until we come to a point in Africa where there is a close collaboration between the academic institutions and the people who are in the marketplace, we will keep having academic institutions who will develop failed curriculum and train professionals who will leave schools and don't have the capacity and the mindset to integrate in the current marketplace. That is a big challenge we are facing. If you run a school, one of the best things you can do is to create a platform where the teachers and the lecturers in your schools can have close collaboration and conversation with the professionals who are in the marketplace. Get business owners, get working people, get all of these people who are hands-on in the marketplace and talk to them, listen to them, and come to a place where you can design curriculums, you can design programs, you can design seminars, you can design conferences with your students that will give them what they need when it comes to dominating in the marketplace. My proposed solutions about what can be done. This is what I think as somebody who is in the marketplace and as somebody who is partly in the academia. These are my proposed solutions that I think that if Africa starts looking at them, or people that are at the head of these institutions, if they start looking at these solutions and seeking ways to implement them, we are going to start shifting Africa from a continent known to be one of the poorest continents in the world to one of the most richest and prosperous continents. We are already rich in material resources, but we need the right human capital to convert material resources into value that we can convert to money and be able to build a better continent. Proposed solutions. Number one, of course, curriculum reform. The curriculum must be reformed. We need to shift the focus from rote memorization. You know that many people go to school to memorize, but we need to shift the way we design and deliver curriculum from encouraging memorization to encouraging critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity by incorporating what I call project-based learning and inquiry-based approaches. Let me tell you something. If our students leave the university with critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity, and they have been working on project-based learning methods and inquiry-based approaches, we are going to have some of the best professionals across Africa. You see that? Number two, skills of the future. One thing I work a lot on as a person, and I've consulted on this with different communities and institutions, is the future of work, skills of the future, workplace of the future, and how the workplace will look like in the next 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, right? A lot is going to change. So the education system in Africa needs to start thinking about skills for the future. Do we have the training system that will provide our students with the skills that they need to operate in the future? And this goes back to the lecturers. We cannot keep having lecturers who are old enough and they keep using content from 10 years and 20 years ago, or keep using the same mindset of the 1970s, 1980s to train people in this century in 2024. It's not going to work, because the way we used to work in 1990 or in the year 2000 is not the same way we work now. The tools and the equipments that we are using now are not the same that they used to use 10, 20 years ago. So skills of the future needs to be an integral part of everything that every university and high school is doing. We need to go further and begin to integrate financial literacy, entrepreneurship education, vocational training, platforms and tech tools of the future into the curriculum to equip our students with the skills needed to thrive in this modern African economy. Number three, equity and access. This is important. We need to address socioeconomic disparities by increasing access to quality education, especially in rural areas, semi-urban areas. Africa is still largely made up of rural areas and semi-urban areas, right? And until there is proper access of quality education in rural and semi-urban areas, Africa will still struggle. We will keep having talent in rural areas and semi-urban areas that is not refined. Talent that is not refined cannot help anybody. You see? So, Africa needs to start considering alternative learning models for geographically isolated communities. Oh yes, Like my village, for example, there are many villages that there's no electricity, there's no a proper mobile phone coverage, there's no internet really, but there are human beings in those areas. There are smart human beings in those areas. For example, me, if I did not leave my village in the year 2002 to further my education, thanks to my aunt and my uncle, God bless them. If I did not move from the village where I was born and I grew up, my village, we used to see a cow once a month, sometimes once in 2 months. There was no electricity. Till now, there's no electricity. There was no pipe-borne water and all of that, right? So if my mom if my mom and my aunt and my uncle did not team up for me to leave the village for the first time and go to Kumbu, a semi-urban town, to continue my education, I would have remained in the village. And you know the funny thing, in that primary school that we graduated that year from class 7, I was the only person that was able to go to a secondary school. So it means my classmates did not access secondary school education. They stayed in the village because not every family had the opportunity to have a relative in the city, in the urban area, to get them to go to school. I was blessed enough to have that. If not, I would have been excluded from the active economy that I am part of right now. You see? So Africa is suffering from lack of potentials, or Africa is missing out on so many talented, intelligent, smart minds who are lost in villages, rural areas, and semi-urban areas, because they cannot access proper education that will transform their lives and their destinies and turn them into contributors and creators of the economy. So African government and educational partners need to come to a point where they need to start considering alternative learning models for geographically isolated communities. What this is, I don't know. But if we come on the same table and begin to think and begin to create, we will find the solutions of alternative learning models for people in isolated communities across the African continent. But this needs to be a center of discussion and critical thinking so that we can make this work. Number 4, the fourth solution I'm proposing, what I call contextualization. We need to come to a point where we are developing curriculum that is relevant to the African context, incorporating local knowledge, local languages, and the needs of the African job market while maintaining a global perspective. This is important because over the years, Africa has done mostly copy work. They copy Europe, content from Europe and America and even Asia now and Middle East, and then they combine all of this and they begin to deliver. The lecturers go on Google and just Google different topics, copy and paste, cut them, nail them, right? Badge it together, and then they go start lecturing and dictating. That is not going to raise critical thinkers and problem solvers in Africa. We need to come to a place where we are contextualizing our curriculum. Contextualizing, developing it. Yes, we can get on different concepts. I used to lecture in the university. I used to lecture in high school. One thing I used to spend a lot of time doing is contextualizing. That's why since I stopped teaching in high school years ago and university, many students still have very good relationships, because the way I used to teach, from marketing to business management to commerce and finance, strategic management, change management, organizational behavior, all of these courses and subjects I used to teach, when I get the books from different experts, I spend time to read. I used to go through a process. When I read, I get the context, I start contextualizing. I will start by generating only local examples. I never hardly use, if I give 10 examples in a class, 8 would be of local institutions that they can relate with. And 2 will be global institutions that they can see, if these guys are doing this locally this way, if they start doing this way, they can go global, right? That's what I'm talking about. Our teachers, our lecturers need to start practicing contextualization of the curriculum. Break it down so that it is relevant to the African context. We need to come to a point where we are incorporating local knowledge, even local languages, incorporating the needs of the African marketplace. Let me tell you something. I've had the privilege to do some work in Dubai, in the Middle East, do some work in Europe, do some work in North America. The job market in North America, the job market in Europe, the job market in the Middle East, the job market in Asia is totally different from the job market in Africa. Way different. Absolutely different. So without contextualization, a lot will keep missing out. So we need to start contextualizing and developing curriculum that meets the African marketplace while maintaining a global perspective. Number 5, the fifth solution I'm proposing: intentional technological integration. This is important. I added the word intentional. I still feel that many governments and educational stakeholders are still treating technology as a passive subject. No. Now and forever till Jesus will return, technology should not be passive. In short, one of the most important budgets in every educational institution now in Africa should go to technology. Technology to have one of the biggest budget heads. Oh, yes. It should have one of the biggest budget heads, because technology is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have in this dispensation. Utilizing technology to personalize learning for students, using technology to improve access to educational resources, using technology to bridge the digital divide in Africa is critical for this dispensation. We must invest heavily in technology. Technological integration is critical if we will transform Africa and raise wealth creators and not poverty-stricken professionals. Number 6, teacher training. Of course, we cannot talk about all of these without talking about teacher training. Teacher training is critical. For us to shift the educational sector in Africa, we need to start shifting the way we train our teachers. If we get the teachers wrong, we will get the students wrong. We need to start implementing comprehensive, innovative, critical driven teacher training programs that focus on showing teachers how to drive positive reinforcement, how to give birth to high expectations, how to foster and build the entrepreneurial spirit of every student. And I will add, this may be hard, but this is the fact in this dispensation now and henceforth. People should stop recruiting teachers who have zero-based technological knowledge. It's every teacher in every sector. There is no sector in the world right now that technology is not affecting. There is none. Every sector is technologically driven, and every sector in Africa will be massively disrupted by technology in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years. A teacher who does not have a certain level of technological knowledge and cannot, hear me very well, a teacher who cannot drive technological integration in their field and cannot talk about technological transformation in their field is not qualified to be a teacher in this dispensation. It's hard, but that's a fact. You may argue me now, but I give you 5 years. I give you 10 years. You will remember what I said. Everybody who teaches must take technology serious and must understand technological integration and digital transformation as far as the subject they are teaching is concerned. If not, you are not ready to be a teacher in this dispensation. Number 7, partnerships with businesses. If you run a school in any community and you don't have a structure where you are partnering with business owners in your community, you are missing out big on something. You establish partnership between your school and your local businesses. Why? So you can provide practical experiences and mentorship. You are training those students to go work somewhere. You are training those students to go work in institutions and businesses and NGOs. You are training them to go work for an institution. So if you are not giving them that practical experience and mentorship while they are still in school, you are not doing them a good thing. You are not preparing them well for the real world. You need to link education to real economic activities. Create a better structure for that. Number 8, policy reforms. Now, this goes to government. I know we have governments across Africa that they are married and they have a romantic relationship with bribery, corruption, embezzlement. I know many countries, a certain country where ministers of education embezzle money budget for school buildings and didactic materials, embezzle money for teacher salaries, reduce salaries of teachers and all of that. I know that exists in Africa, but we must keep talking about it. We will not go far with the education system in Africa. We will not go far in creating or training wealth creators with poor educational policies. If you are listening to me and you are in a place where you can advocate, please advocate for educational policy reforms that support innovation, that support flexible learning, that support access to technology, that support access to resources that can broaden students' horizon and economic opportunities. Advocate for a shift in educational policies. All of these solutions I'm talking about, with the wrong policies and with if we don't have the right educational policy advocate, we have the wrong ministers in place and the wrong directors and all of these things, we will keep struggling. But for those, this works a lot for those for government-led educational institutions. But if you are a private stakeholder in the education sector, there are many of these things that I have said that you can start implementing in your school, that you don't need the intervention of the government. And I was talking with a school owner one time, and I was saying, look, she needs to invest some money in this. And I was saying so and emphasizing that, her school will have a competitive advantage and will be able to stand out and gain more students, because every parent will like their child to attain a school that will give them a great future. Policy reforms. Number 9, community engagement. Involve local communities in curriculum development to ensure relevance, applicability, and contextualization. Yes. Let me tell you something. Local communities, for example, you're a church pastor. Pastors are very influential in Africa in different communities. Involve them. What about local chiefs, local funds, traditional rulers? Involve them. They have a role to play when it comes to applicability, relevance, and of course, contextualizing. What about associations, women leaders, youth-led associations? These people are critical. They are critical. And this is one thing that I think the US and Canada, they got it so well. They are very good at community engagement when it comes to education. And number 10, international collaboration. Establish working partnerships with global institutions and global businesses to exchange knowledge and best practices with the mindset of contextualizing the knowledge and best practices and also giving our students in Africa that global perspective. Establish international collaboration. Reach out to sister universities. Use LinkedIn. Use social media. Look for founders of institutions and rectors and chancellors. Go to the website. Get schools. Get school emails. Send an email. Pay a flight. Go to another country. Visit 10, 20 schools. Establish a relationship. Establish a connection. Go to another country. Visit businesses, highlight them, visit them, talk to them, tell them you're a school owner, you're a school leader, and you want to establish a relationship. They will not. The worst thing you can get is a no or rejection. I do a lot of trainings. I have a training institute that will train people on short programs and all of that to help them integrate in the economy. And when I go to different countries, well, I will identify businesses and institutions, and I will just go and try and send emails, and sometimes I will call. Sometimes I will go to their offices without appointment. Some will welcome me. Some will say they are not on seat, they are busy. And I've been able to establish good relationships. You see that? There was a time I even took a couple of our students to Dubai. You see? So there are some things that your students will never ever learn in class. They will learn them through exchange programs. They will learn them through exposure. They will learn them through travels. International collaboration is a powerful way to give your students global perspective in the industry that you're training them in. Well, to end this my ranting, to create significant change across Africa's social, economic, and political landscape, we must change the educational system first. All of these that I shared, they're my personal observations, experiences, and conclusions and opinions. I don't expect everybody to agree. And of course, it is thoughtful conversations like this and thoughtful arguments like this and thoughtful exchange of knowledge like this with respect that lead to innovation and the improvement of every society. Do you agree or do you disagree? Share your comments in the comment section. Send me a DM if you want us to have a chit chat. You run an educational system or institution and you want us to talk. Reach out to me on any of the social media platforms or leave a comment anywhere you're watching or listening to this on any podcast platform. And I will happily love to have a conversation with you. God bless you. My name is Javnyuy Joybert. Thank you for listening. To everybody who listens, thank you. God bless you. Thank you for those who are sharing. I appreciate you. Keep building your dream. Keep going forward. Keep being a disruptor. Keep being a contributor. Refuse to settle. And remember, every single day of your life, you are rare, you are remarkable, and God sent you here on earth for a purpose, and you will fulfill it. Keep building that dream. God bless you.